Hello, welcome to another Azure Centric Podcast, our weekly update show with my good friend Andrew Lowes. This week, Andrew, I don't know what happened on Microsoft, but as last week, I think we are reaching. I know why, or I think I know why. We are reaching to the quarter. At the end of the quarter.
Oh,
No,
that's
the end
true.
of the
Yeah,
quarter.
it's offset.
No, sorry.
Yeah, it was
It,
March.
it's
I would
March.
think, but
Yeah, it's not
yeah.
even that.
Well,
So
it was the big push for month end, right? Nonetheless, there was something like 35 updates on the Just the Updates blog.
yes.
So we kind of did a very aggressive kind of 3 times over, and we cut a lot.
So yes, this time we got more than a half. So we have about 15 updates on the show. So we have a big agenda again. I don't want to scare you that you are listening, but I just want to give you kind of an idea. It's a very good one. We just got
It
the
is.
need of the updates, and there are a few updates that I have to say that they did change the way. There is a lot of announcements, a lot of retirements, unfortunately. If we were a professional kind of podcast, not an amateur like ours, we will have some kind of those sounds saying waving goodbye and something like that. And you will see.
I always think of The Simpsons with the mixing board with the radio morning DJs,
Yeah,
and they have like a toilet flushing sound or something like
absolutely.
that.
But
It's terrible.
But this show, without you, it's impossible to make it. So thank you
Absolutely. Thank
for
you
your
so
support.
much, everybody.
For your support. Don't forget to subscribe the channel, the podcast, the show. We have a lot of fun. We literally spend 1 hour just laughing about a lot of those things.
We
Just to give an idea, and because this, I think, we are back into almost night, as you can see from the Andrew's window. Um, but we decided to do this as the old-fashioned way, just for our peace. We had a very busy week as well on Azure and on work, so we decided to keep going with this. Without further ado, let's start the show, right? So
Absolutely, the show must go
the show
on.
must go on, exactly. The first update is the Azure Image Builder Service, now GA. And what I like about this, okay, is first of all, it's nothing to do with the update. It's something that we are starting to see in our show, that we see the evolution of this coming. A lot of updates they
Absolutely.
coming in development. A lot of they don't come in development, right? They come in preview. This was a preview that we mentioned a few episodes back. Okay, so I will link to the top of the screen. In this case, the episode they're talking about this as the preview. In this case, and I will and this basically is GA now. So Azure Image Builder Service is GA.
Absolutely. And I'd actually like to point out, if you go to Microsoft Docs as of this evening, it is actually not updated. That's how fresh this is. So it still says that the preview features are available, even though GA has now been released.
Yes.
So one of the things that I really I remember talking about this when it was in preview, and we talked about creating gold images, golden images, gold image, gold standard image, whatever your org calls it. But it's very important. And one of the things that I noticed in the Microsoft Docs is they actually added, through the preview process, creation of images in VHD format to support Azure Stack. So it's not just Azure IaaS that's supported, in this case for images. It's also supporting Azure Stack for custom images, right?
Yeah, exactly. It is, and there is a lot of good thing about this. The part, I had to go. Sorry, I apologize, but I had to go to the docks, right? And it's literally like you said, it's dated, and the thing is, this is dated of 2nd of May 2019, and it says preview Azure Azure Image Builder Overview.
You know what it is? It's probably somebody wrote the draft and it was Friday afternoon and they said, don't worry about it. We'll catch that Monday morning before anybody notices.
Yes, true. And that can literally happen that without anything. But
well, we do have to acknowledge, we do record this post business day.
Yeah.
So sometimes those things happen on a Friday. People want to go skiing or biking or whatever people that are allowed to go outside do.
Exactly. Depending on...
Not that I'm feeling bitter about it right now.
No. We didn't understand that part. It really depends on where are you located, where are you listening and seeing the podcast, exactly. And what your government does. Here in Alberta, we are allowed to go out, but not to every single place yet.
It's true.
We are
a lot of times there. I just don't have the time to go outside.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the other problem.
I think it's a different problem, but that's okay.
It is.
Let's go back to Image Builder. Yes,
absolutely. So
we did
this is
work.
a really, really cool thing to have in GA because now orgs can actually build their custom images in cloud. So another very major move towards cloud native, which is very important that we keep kind of things close together, is the way I like to try and describe that.
Yeah.
We're going to long be in a hybrid model for many companies, but some companies may choose to go either direction, right? They may favor on-prem or they may favor cloud. So it's really nice that we can keep images closer in cloud to the systems that are going to consume them. First of all, it's going to be much faster, but second, it's also going to be less data transfer, which is cheaper.
Yeah.
So really cool. A lot of good opportunity in this one, and I really like. At the same time as I'm talking, I'm looking through the MS doc at some of the JSON build pieces here, and I think there's a lot of flexibility with this. And it's going to be really cool to see as this product evolves in general release. There we go. That was hard to say.
But I have to say one thing is I was looking at the previous update because when I was reading this, I got an impression that they add some of those features. And one of the features that they are adding this is the Windows Virtual Desktop environment.
Mm-hmm.
So that is one of the things that the Image Builder Service now does. That, if I'm not mistaken,
huge, right?
It was not on the preview. Okay.
I did not see it in the preview that I was just reviewing.
And
so I think that's a net new, which is really super cool because now we can do code-based builds of images for WVD, right?
Exactly.
I mean, freaking awesome.
And there are two other things. It's the integration with Azure DevOps that was not there before. The patching was it, but if you want to really doing this on the way that this service is working, you want to base your images on this image builder. You want to create your images like you mentioned, the gold image, and Azure DevOps integration now it's key for that. So it's way easier to do it. And the last but not least is the integration in Azure with the VNet connectivity for enterprise network options. So something like public IPs and something like that, now you can build the image according to that. And
without the public IP.
And I will highly recommend you to go to the podcast that we talk about that, because I'm almost sure that those are the three things that they added on this service as a GA. And
Yeah,
this,
absolutely. Yeah, I'm not 100% on the Azure Stack ad. I just don't remember seeing it
yes, the part of
in
Azure
there.
Stack I don't remember as well, so I will keep it that part. But the patching, of course, and the creating, the customizing, and the compliant, it was there since the beginning. And this
Yeah.
is another point that we always mention every single week when we have a preview, that things may change. It's not to deploy in production, but because things may change, you may need to redeploy this. In this case, they are adding more features, so which is really good on this GA, right? And that's
Yeah,
that's the
so
part that excites me
that's
the
a
most.
really good point because I actually, as you know, I have a client I'm working with right now, and we're actually working in Azure VMware Service, and one of the features is in private preview for SRM, the site replication
Yeah.
to use for DR, right, in VMware. But they really want to roll it out. They want to test it, and we had to very clearly define what that means. So we had to make sure that we had a commitment from the different teams that, yes, we're going to enable this as a private preview, but at the same time, we're going to say you cannot do this in prod networks. So you can't move active production workloads using SRM in this case. And it's very important because it may not be stable. It might be okay. That's the one thing to say, is it might be okay. But that might is a pretty big might. And I don't like to gamble with production workloads on a maybe. So it is important. If something's in preview, private preview, public preview, that is not intended for production use. So a big speech, but it's really interesting because we see this play out at our client sites time and time again. And I wanted to drive that home. I know that there's a few folks from the company that I'm working with right now that do listen to our Azure Centric podcast. So
So we increased from 9 to 10 now.
I think we might be hitting double digits soon.
Wow! Wow, that's awesome.
Exactly. So enough with the lecturing.
Exactly.
It is a tradition here. We have to have a lecture on a weekly basis about, please, preview? No, not on prod.
Yeah. Okay. The next update talking about is the This is a mouthful one. I will let you just talk.
Oh, do you want me to take this one?
Yes, please.
I got you. I can't promise I'll do any better, but I'll do it. So the E64i v3 and E64is v3 Azure VMs will not be hardware isolated on the 28th of February next year in 2022. So we're getting a full 1 year plus
6
minus
days.
a couple of days, depending on published date.
Yeah, 6 days.
Notice on this one. And this one is actually important because as we were talking about in our preview getting ready for this, there's some tie-ins to these, right?
Yes.
So a lot of different certifications for different programs. Especially we always think of SAP HANA when we think of hardware and the tiers of dedicated hosts. These are the big boys, right?
Yeah.
So these are the big ones where you have the dedicated hosting in the E series. And
I just want, before we going on that rabbit hole on that, to just step back a little bit and probably revisit what is the Azure dedicated host, because that could be simple to understand the next few updates that we're talking about, and will probably make totally more sense for you that you are listening and seeing the podcast, that why is this coming and why we have all of these announcements, in this case of retirement or changing, in this case on the Azure environments. So
that's a good point. So I'm going to go right to the horse's mouth on this one, right from Azure. I should say Azure Online support here. So a dedicated host provides physical servers that host one or more Azure virtual machines. Your server is dedicated to your organization and workloads. So it also means that not only do you provision the host, when you provision the host, I should say, you gain visibility into and control over the server infrastructure. So you are now determining the host's maintenance policies, right?
Yes.
So that is direct from the horse's mouth there. And this is basically the same as standing up a bare metal in your own data center on-prem, right? So this is the Azure version of bare metal, which is a dedicated host.
Yes.
But yet you can dynamically provision this piece of physical hardware in Microsoft's rack.
Yes. And the thing about all of that, and I was exactly doing the same, is this is a dedicated host. So you have, in this case, hardware isolation. So it's not on the same platform and manageability that you have on other VMs. And all of these VMs will not be hardware isolated. So what does that mean? Means that all of these type of VMs, that they are huge, okay, we're talking about very big VMs, are getting as a normal VM. So this is, for me, is hides another update that's saying that the hosts that they are hosting these VMs are getting bigger and bigger. And if you read on the, in this case, on the post, in this case, they say that one of the things is before February 28th of 2022, so next year, around this time frame, you should migrate your workload to the E80s IS.
That's right.
And E80s IS V4. So those are not normal VMs. Those are a beast of VMs.
Well, so when we talk about the E and then a number, we're talking about the number of cores.
Yes.
Like the number of virtual CPUs, right?
Yeah.
So the E64 has the 64 CPU. So that means the E80 has what, like 150? Well, it's going to have 80, right?
Yeah.
So this is big. So an E80 also comes 80 CPUs, obviously, but 504 gigs of RAM.
Just.
And the temp storage is 2.4 terabytes, by the way, 2,400 gigs. Okay, so for those that are going to be very specific about math, that was just divide by 10 for me. That's not divide by 1,024. That was not a perfect equation there. I just thought I should point that out because I know I would have said something about that.
So if some clone of Andrew is listening to the podcast, right?
Absolutely. So one of the interesting things is I'm just looking at the general release pricing for Canada Central on an E80. And if you do a 1 year reserved, it's $4.78 roughly per hour off of the Azure site. So that's pretty expensive for a VM. But in this case, it's not really a VM. It's kind of a VM, but not really, right? It's the dedicated host.
Yeah, it's a VM that runs on the dedicated host, and that's on the hardware
exactly.
that you can control in this case. Because
Exactly.
a lot of those things, it's compliance. And we talk about this.
Yeah, we talk about the verticals,
The
right?
GS, in this case, the SAP HANA, like you mentioned. And as a good segue, the other announcement related to this, and there are three, this is the second one, is the GS5 Azure Virtual Machines will no longer be SAP HANA Certified by the same date, February 28, 2022. And the reason why
it's the same date.
it is because those machines, okay, that they are the GS, that they are, it was the first generation of the beasts, okay. It was the GS series or the G series, okay. It was the first generation. They are being, it's not discommissioned, but they are moving away from those hardware isolation, right?
They're going to be virtualized.
They're going to be
not
virtualized.
dedicated.
So I don't want to imagine what is in this case, the specifications of the hosts that will host these beasts. I really don't want to know because I think it's going to blow my mind.
It's going to be wild.
And it's going to be really wild. But again, if you have SAP HANA, okay, that is running into these type of the VMs, the thing that they are saying over here is SAP, in this case SAP, will no longer certify those series. So you might still running those, okay? And let me clarify about this. You might still running those, but you will not get support from SAP. Either from you will get support for Microsoft because it's a G series and they are not decommissioning this G series, but you will not get support from SAP. And that is the part that they are starting to say over here is no longer certified for SAP HANA. Okay, so you need to move on to another ones like the E64 that we talk about, or even the E80s or any other type of VM that you want to use it in this case, right? And this is something that I think is worth mentioning. And continuing on the same segue, then becomes the announcement that triggers the previous announcement that the G5 and the GS5 VMs will no longer have hardware isolation. So this means that they will be available, okay, but they will not be on the dedicated hosts, on the dedicated hardware. So you will no longer have access to as the compliant hardware, like you mentioned, from the azure.microsoft.com, the horse mouth, like you mentioned. They will no longer be on that part, and because of that, you need a lot of things coming on the cascade, right? Azure Command Line and Azure Portal is going to be different because you no longer have those capabilities of managing the dedicated hosts, for example.
Exactly, right? Yeah, and you also lose control over the updates because you're not managing.
Exactly.
And that's important because if you're in an ecosystem where you have to have tight control over that for compatibility and especially for downtime, then moving a host that size, like a VM that size, you may have an interruption here and there. Sometimes these things happen, but that's why we need to configure things for high availability, and we have to stay on top of these updates for our environments. Really important.
Yeah.
It's a big reason why we actually do this podcast.
Absolutely.
So that people can get a quick heads up in most cases. Now, I think if we want to keep moving ahead pretty quick on this.
But you just mentioned one thing I think it's really important to mention in this show, in this podcast, that if this is not the same, but you might think, but in this case, if we stop the VM for a few moments and changing the size is not going to be the same. In this case, it's not, because this VM is on a dedicated host. So if you're moving, for example, from this G series, the G5 or GS5, for example, to the E80s, like we mentioned, or the E64 or the E80s that they have dedicated hosts, now you are building a new host, a new VM. It's not the same as you going on the portal, shut down the VM, going there on the properties and going to the upsize. So it's totally different, like you mentioned. And I think it was important to mention over here on the podcast, because I'm following, in this case, your direction. Like, if we can help just one person, we are golden. It's our goal.
It's true. And I like what you're saying about that, because when I've done this with bare metals in Azure before, it can take about 30 minutes to 2 hours, depending on what's happening in the background. It does a lot of provisioning. It's provisioning that host, making sure that it's in compliance, all of those things. It runs a lot of different infrastructure code to make sure that it's ready for your system. And then they have to move that system. So even though we're talking Azure Backbone, which, what a standard is 10 gig, upgrade in many cases is 100 gig on these bigger systems. But this is, these are very large workloads on these systems, right? So there's typically going to be a ton of data with it.
And it's not only that, it's adding to that is the capacity of now going from a GS5 to a E80, in this case, type of size of VM.
Upsize too.
It's a big upsize as well. So there is the capacity of those dedicated hosts. As you can imagine, it's one thing talking about VMs on your infrastructure. The other thing is talking about running that VM on a dedicated host that you have control, right?
So I can tell I spent the day in VMware because I'm thinking to myself, just thin provision it. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Oh, I need a beer.
Oh my God. Just one at each time, right?
I'm going to stay professional. I need a beer.
I need a beer. I like that. So as the next update, changing subjects, Azure Automation, it's now available on the United Arab Emirates, right? Yeah. I always confusing Central region.
Well, we're just going to say UAE.
UAE, I think it's easier, yeah.
So this is cool because I think for like the last 4 weeks in a row, there's been something about Azure Automation somewhere.
Yes.
I remember there was a week we had 2 in Japan or something like that.
Yeah.
And then now we have UAE. So it's really cool. One of these times we're going to create a map and we're going to just track. We're going to just pick one topic, one service, and we're going to track as it's released worldwide across all the data centers for Azure.
That is a very awesome idea. Just to see how the things are deploying and moving on. We should have a track, some kind of a dashboard. My God, we are inspired today. I have to say.
Once in a while, I have a good idea. I got to ride that sucker for the next week now.
So coming to not very happy news, okay? Microsoft is retiring the Network Performance Monitor on February 29, 2024. And this is the part that I start liking. We have a few updates regarding these retirements. And they are giving a head update. They are giving a quite of time for you to moving on and to learn about
this
the new
is an
tools.
Interesting one. So this hits home for me because I'm still pulling data from a network performance monitor.
Yes.
So in my own subscription, because as is often the case, we always put our clients first. And by the time we have family first and client first and the dog comes first, and then, somebody up the street comes first, and we help everybody, our own stuff. Here I am still using Network Performance Monitor, even though I know that it's pretty deprecated.
Yeah.
So I'm not setting a good example, but now I'm going to have to, because I'm going to have to move everything to Azure Monitor.
You still have 3 years, so
well,
that's okay with that. But the good thing about this is they are announcing this with 3 years ahead. So if you like us, and then I'm going to do the challenge, and I'm going to steal your idea.
I know where
if you like this video, and only if you like this video, and you're sending a message with the liking video, we will create for you a calendar update to just
custom calendar event.
A very custom calendar update just for you.
We'll do it. We'll absolutely do it. I will make the time.
Because to be very honest, I will forget about this absolutely sure in 3 years. Although I have to say,
let's sweeten the pot a little here.
Yeah.
So not only will Marcos and Andrew create a custom calendar event for you from Azure Centric, we will also list your name on a future podcast as one of the very dedicated participants with Azure Centric.
Yeah.
weekly updates podcast that takes initiative to upgrade and update their Azure infrastructure and services.
Absolutely.
It's a leader position.
It's a leader position. Absolutely. But in this case, now jokes aside, and we are having too much fun on this episode. I'm starting not using these on the new things, to be very honest. Because I did see the value. I was playing around. I was working in this case on the new features of the NSGs, for example, when you get all of that information. And I was using the Azure Network Watcher. And this is what has been replaced by, is the Network Performance Monitor is going to be replaced by the Azure Network Watcher. That it's way better than this. So jokes aside, just go there and start to get familiar with Azure Network Watcher, because you will not regret it.
But be careful if you rolled it out previously, because coming up in our next one, there's a little bit of a catch about Azure Network Watcher, I think, right?
Yes. But I have to say one thing is that is mentioned there, that is the action required in this case on the post is starting on July 1st, in this case of this year, so in a few months, you will not be able to add new tests in existing workspace or enable new workspace in Network Performance Monitor. So they will discommission these in 3 years, but starting in July, you are not able to add those.
Yeah, you can't extend it anymore, and you can use what you have, but you're kind of stuck. I think the way they do that is actually a very positive thing, right?
I think it is.
Because they try to convince us and kind of move us towards using the newer service offering instead of the older one. A lot of times it's like, you think of like the Windows XP problem, where so many corporations and organizations were really heavily invested in it. And kind of at the same time, we started seeing a very good push towards continuous improvement within Microsoft as well. Mm-hmm. And everything's kind of come together. So we have a much faster product ecosystem now. And we have to accept some of those changes. So without getting too deep down that very deep rabbit hole, I just want to say, be open to those changes, be open to the updates. Azure Network Watcher is very good. So is Azure Monitor. It's, they all kind of, everything works really well together, right? Of course, because that's the way they build them.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, sir.
No, you first.
I was just thinking, I actually have some custom code to update. In this case with Network Watcher, because I did have a little bit of customizations done in my own tenant that I was testing for a client many years ago. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago now. Seems like forever, I guess. But it's just one of those things. So, get a head start. I love that they're telling us 3 years in advance, but I also think it's pretty funny. I might take you up on that offer for the calendar reminder too.
That's okay. And as a good segue, they are retiring as well the Azure Network Watcher connection monitor on the classic version. Okay.
Yeah, the first version.
The first version, right? Yes. Yeah. So this is related to the, let's call it, I like to call it the V1 of Azure. That is the ASM, right? The Azure Service Manager. Now we are on Azure Resource Manager. So I call it the version 2, particular in this case of Azure. And this is again, everything that you see in class that mention classic, it's attached to the Azure Service Manager that they are moving on.
It's to also retiring.
Also retiring, right? As well, that platform. So again, exactly the same dates, exactly the the same action required starting on July 1st. That is the new year for Microsoft, the new fiscal year for Microsoft. You will not able to add new connection on the Connection Monitor Classic. In this case, you are only being using what's called the new connection monitor that is on the ARM portal, on this case with the ARM version.
So I know my ADD is starting to kick in, Marcos, because as soon as you said July was the new year, all I can think to myself is, wait a minute, that means March is the end of Q3, which means that it's almost summer.
Yes, it is, my friend. Gladly that the winter is only have, theoretically, is only have 20 something days.
That's great news.
That is.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I think you all underestimate how hard Marcos has to work for this podcast just to keep me on task.
Yes, this has already been I already said this several times during this show on different episodes. This is one of the highlights of my week. Is ending the week with this, because I feel way better after drinking a beer after the show, right? And going on the weekend and relaxing and preparing the next week, as we prepare for the next one. Okay.
This is true. So this was my favorite one when we were doing our review for the articles in the show, which was really hard this week because there was a lot of updates and we had to cut some stuff that we really liked. So, I mean, if you're looking for a very thorough review, please visit Azure Updates blog and check out all of the updates that we do and do not talk about. We try to stay a little bit focused for our areas of expertise in Azure. So we tend to stay away from some of the DevOps things. We mentioned some that are relevant for crossover, but there's lots of other data ones and app-driven ones that we don't talk about. So if those areas are also important for you or your organization, we always encourage everybody, just absolutely everybody, go visit azure.microsoft.com, dig through, have a look. It's a massive amount of data in the sites and subsites, but nonetheless, this update is about sometime 3 years from now, we're going to have to make sure that we update our scripts using AZ PowerShell modules.
Yeah.
So there's been lots of updates with Azure RM PowerShell, and I think over the last maybe 6 months or something, it's updated quite a few times, like minor updates.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of the cue. Hey, if you have a lot of scripting in place, and I know I use a lot of run books and things, I'm going to have to take a look at some of mine. This is your heads up. Plan for it. And I think there's a lot of organizations really take advantage of run books in cool ways. We were talking about this week, and we've seen not just from different consultants, but also ourselves. We produce these run books to help with governance long term, because we can schedule them, we can use them to generate reports, or in my case, I love not just generating the reports, but also making the changes to keep everything in compliance.
Yes.
So that's where I see a lot of a big value. There's so many different uses and use cases. There we go. Sorry, it just came out all as one crazy word there. But there's many uses and use cases. It's going downhill fast here. For runbooks and AZ PowerShell. Yes. So please.
I have to say, good. But I agree with you. This is the third time on the history of PowerShell for Azure that has been updated. The first one was using only the Azure one, okay, and now that was more for the version 1 It was more connected to the version 1 at that time, like the ASM, the Azure Service Manager. And then when we starting to use the ARM, in this case the Azure Resource Manager, they update with Azure RM at that time. And now they shortened that to AZ. So again, this is the way that Microsoft is saying that you have 3 years, okay, that you need to update those PowerShell commands that are still running right now, okay, with Azure RM, although they are not being updated with a lot of the new features, okay. You have to take that into consideration and to update to the AZ one, okay. They are trying to make this as similar as the Azure CLI as well, to very familiar, so then you can choose, because even Azure CLI is not on the same level as PowerShell, but it's starting.
But there's a bit of difference.
There has a bit of
really
difference. It's really close. It's getting there, and the good thing about this is that there is a hidden update on this. Is the end date is going to be on the leap year, because it's going to be on the 29th of February 29. I don't know if you noticed that part.
I did. I was hoping you were going to pick up on it. If not, I was going to add it at the end.
Yeah, because they already announcing, Microsoft is always ahead of the game, that in 2024 is going to be a leap year. And I'm already scared because I'm not dealing very well with leap years. So, but the good thing is, and I have a tip for everyone, is I use, in this case, to update all my PowerShell scripts. Guess what? Azure DevOps.
Oh, very good. Yes, this is true, right?
So what I did is I have my compliant.
It's really cool.
I have all my repository in Azure DevOps, okay, of scripts, because now I can get from everywhere that I want, okay. I upload all my scripts there. So when this was, they changed this, and they're doing, now I just need to run the command to update this word, because this is just updating a word. Of course that you have way more functionality and switches that are available with the AZ PowerShell commands or modules, in this case not commands, that you have on Azure RM. But if you are the basic ones, just updating, in this case, the verb of Azure RM to AZ, it should be sufficient for you to be able to run the command, generally speaking. Okay?
That's a good advice, generally speaking. And I think that you're correct, because I have updated a number of my commands. As you know, I love doing exhaustive demos sometimes. And I like to cross over between CLI and PowerShell in Azure Cloud Shell. It's one of my favorite things. You know, I'm an old command line guy. The mouse thing drives me crazy sometimes. And my very dedicated massage therapist will tell you that my forearm is garbage from the mouse.
Yes. Not everyone ever dedicated, like an Azure dedicated host. You have a massage therapist dedicated.
I'm very lucky. I have somebody in my family who's not only beautiful and smart, but also very talented as a RMT. So, yeah.
Okay, I think we should move on in this case.
Yeah, we really should.
We are going down very easily, and I think we should control ourselves a little bit more.
So, sticking with your magical theme of leprechauns and leap years, we do have another special update about Azure App Gateway Analytics being retired, right? So what does this actually mean for us, Marcos? I think we use a lot of application gateways, which is really just a layer 7 load balancer, right?
Yes.
But we use them a lot. I think I even have a few deployed in my own testing tenant, to be honest with you right now. Because I was doing some fun work, actually. We should talk after this recording. But there's some cool stuff with Azure App Gateway analytics. What did this move to? We want to move to Azure Monitor Network Insights.
Yes.
Right? So here's that push. They're trying to unify where we see the reporting and analytics data, which is really good because it means less blades that we have to click on.
Yeah.
As you know, we've had a really big kind of a security push from Microsoft over the winter months here.
Yeah.
Which I think has been great. Actually, it's been awesome.
Absolutely.
And a lot of clients that we've worked with have expressed what I like to call dashboard fatigue.
Yes.
So,
and it's not only that. This Azure Network Monitoring Insights, as you mentioned, is directly attached to one of our new favorite tools, that is Azure Sentinel.
yes, sir. That is correct.
So we are getting, if you move this, and now starting to see that Azure Sentinel is growing tremendously day by day. The usage, the way that they are updating the functionalities, and the way that everyone is starting to work with Azure Sentinel and what Azure Sentinel can do. It doesn't surprise me at all, to be very honest. They are giving us a fairly amount of time to just switching to this, and it's going to be for me. I think this one is going to be a easy transition, because if you want to work with Azure Sentinel, in this case the Application Gateway Analytics doesn't perform as well as the Azure Monitor Networking Insights.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And you will be kind of forced, not because of the end date, but because of the tools that you want to work with. In this case, it's more Azure Sentinel. This is my
we get to
intake
play with it because it's in somebody else's environment. But when Microsoft was starting that push, and I had my first couple of engagements with it, as you know, I did set up Sentinel in my own stuff, and I believe you may have dabbled as well.
Yeah.
And I've been actually loving it because it gives me great assurance, and it helps me feel even a little bit better about when I have to connect to client systems, because it gives me another check and balance that's fully automated. It's darn near real time. It's so fast. And all of the security logs from my tablet, my laptop, all of my systems, all of the household systems, all go back to my own tenant. And I integrated all that the alerting and everything for my own systems. And I think it's fantastic, because then I can actually show and tell my client, hey, I'm actually using Sentinel in my own environment.
Yeah.
Here, let me do a screen share. Let's have a look. I love sharing it because it's such a cool advancement. I don't want to get too sidetracked with it. We should do a special Sentinel episode.
No, absolutely. I even use, I like you said, I use Sentinel at my house as well, at my environment, and I do for other purposes. For example, I have my son that is a heavily Fortnite gamer, and sometimes I want to do this type of videos, right? This type of recordings that I do require bandwidth, and a lot of times I want to watch like Netflix or a movie or something like that, and the internet is so laggy that I'm going directly, and this is too geek, I know, but we are allowed to do this on this podcast. Is I'm going to Azure Sentinel to dig what is going on the network, to start to seeing where all the bandwidth that I have is going forward. And I'm starting to think that I will have a second internet connection, just to make sure that I can have peace of mind while I'm working. And again, it's another secure way that we can connect, especially for those more secure networks that we need to connect to, that we don't need to affect any other type of device at home. Besides that, it's what I love about that is attaching the Microsoft 365 cloud services with all the things that I have at home, with all the windows and endpoints and all of that. So I can literally have almost like in zero trust, zero touch kind of way that I can manage the devices and endpoints. At least
Yeah,
that
I have to
I have
learn
to
more
manage.
about OS deployments. I have to admit, I have never been a fan of learning more than I had to know at the time about deploying OS as automated. That's why I've been
Oh
very grateful for Azure, because I can I can do
yes.
it all through CLI.
But the
But
thing that you like about the thing I'm saying right now, and it's a little bit out of scope of this, is I implemented, and you think, oh, probably it's overkill. It isn't. In my case, it isn't. It saved me a lot of time. I implemented autopilot here at my family, and especially because I have young kids that they are on middle. One is on
we will
junior
call
high
them
school.
the young teenage years.
Exactly. And a lot of times they try to just do it, and before I do anything else, I just reset the device. It's way easier. And when I reset the device, I don't need to spend hours configuring that. So I spend sometimes configuring the autopilot. So now what I need to do is to log in with their credentials. They are not using passwords. They are using passwordless, so they are using MFA for doing that. So it's I know that is a little bit geek, but yes, we need to I need to implement that to just my own sanity. Otherwise, I just pass my own time just troubleshooting what's going on with their devices and all of that. So I implemented autopilot, Windows Autopilot at my home, and I have to say, oh my God, they already know what they need to do, and I don't care anymore. I just received an email saying that new device is being or the update is being refreshed, and that's okay. And I just ask, what you did this time? But
See, I like that, and I don't actually think that it's too far out of scope, because we're really here talking about Azure services.
yeah, this is
And
not Azure service. It's a 365, right?
yeah, it's a 360. There's a lot of crossover, right? Like we've talked about that offline
Yeah.
lots. There's so much crossover, but I think it's important for our viewers and listeners to understand. This is just a snapshot of what we actually do. What, like everybody else, you only see just that little slice. You never
Exactly.
know how deep the iceberg really is
Exactly.
under the surface. So we tend to dabble in all of these crazy things, and clearly I am behind the times. I am a dinosaur because I still use USB stick for my imaging at home.
No.
And
I already
I
got rid of that.
I give my son a few bucks to spend on Steam, and I say, hey, listen, you just take care of this imaging here, would you? All right, cool. And then I go on about my merry way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you should share with me offline, probably. I mean, if you want to do it now, fine, but we should pause for the sake of our listeners' sanity.
No, that's okay. But it was a good segue because the next update is related to this, and is related to the Azure AD Connect. So Microsoft becomes Canadian, okay, and they start this update with the Canadian way, that is, please. It was not sorry, but it's please upgrade your Azure AD Connect sync to a newer version by the February 29 of 2024. So they're already putting in advance. They say, please upgrade your Azure AD Connect in the next 3 years.
It's true. So every time I engage with a client, I do a lot of, as you know, exchange. What do I want to call that? Remediation with clients. And I did learn from the master, of course, the beautiful and intelligent Marcos Nogueira, here with me today.
Thank you.
Very welcome, sir. But on a serious note, though, like Azure AD Connect is a big part of the foundation that we create our hybrid relationships with. for identity, right? So this, if you don't use it or you don't know, Azure AD Connect is what helps us extend our Windows Server Active Directory identity into Azure Active Directory, which then enables us to use, Microsoft 365 services, Azure services, all of those things.
Yeah.
So every time I connect with a new client, I always have that little bit of discovery, and this is stop number 4 on my list. And the reason I know it's stop number 4 off the top of my head is because every single bloody time, hey, why are you running the version from 1942 on your systems? And why do you not have one that is on standby?
Yeah.
I mean, such big companies, huge budgets, critical workloads, emphasis on zero downtime, and then they create this pinch point of a single point of failure with Azure AD Connect. It's so frequent that I had to have a rant about it.
and it's not only that. I would like to add something that is the reason that you should update this is because when they update Azure AD Connect, they are updating new functionalities. Okay,
that's correct.
So, for example, if you want the seamless single sign-on, the triple SO, right? You need to have on the version of Azure AD Connect. Okay. That's otherwise, you don't have that functionality. For example, if you want pass through Ash in this case, you need to be exactly on that, and that's the point that Microsoft is doing. It's not like leave that and forget it. Yes, Azure AD Connect, there is a lot of talking about why is this service not a high availability service, and a lot of that because it's so easy to just configure, right?
It is.
And it's not a main service because the only thing it will do is you will not synchronize, right, with will not synchronize the delta with the on-prem to the cloud, and vice versa if you have reverse as well, right? And that's the part of it. But still, like you mentioned, there is that part, and there is the part of sometimes saying, hey, it's not working this. I'm trying to synchronize and I'm not seeing this working. And a lot of those times, like bullet point, like stop number 4, it's like, which version are you running of Azure AD Connect?
Exactly. Yeah. Like the pass-through authentication, password hash, and Azure AD App Proxy.
Yes.
Another big stop along that way now too, right?
Absolutely.
So we have to make sure that we're keeping these things current. It is a foundation service. I agree. I don't think it has to run in HA. It's typically a kind of, depending if you use password write back, which really, if you're hybrid, you should be.
And that part of not running this is because previous to this we had our good friend the ADFS, the AD Federation Service. That is a service that oh my god, I had so many nightmares with that, but that's okay.
We've had our battles together with ADFS over the years as well.
Completely, but that service it's way more relying on high availability because it's the way that does the authentication. That this doesn't do any authentication. This basically goes the synchronization, and the only thing it does is when you do the pass through hash or the hash that you are using. You can
put this on multiple servers, though. You can put PTA and seamless single sign-on on multiple other systems, and then you do have high availability with that.
For example,
because you have 7 days or something now, 10 days now.
Yeah.
It used to be 3 days, then it was 5 days. Now I'm positive it's 7 or 10.
Yeah, and the difference of ADFS, it's real time, right? You need to have that.
It has to be high availability.
Yes, and that's the main reason.
Yeah, and it is going to be retired in the future. So As you know, I do have a client that's still using ADFS. Actually, I have 3 clients that are still using ADFS. And they are making plans and moving to
AD Connect,
other systems, right? Yeah. Azure, better Azure integration with software. Oftentimes now when we see that, like in a case recently that I did phone a friend and I did talk to you about that with an ADFS customer. And they're using it to help bridge a gap in their migration plan, because they also have an Azure migration plan in place right now to increase their hybrid situation. Yeah. So there's, every organization is always in a different spot, and it's tough to see. Sometimes one of the things we have to remember to do, especially when it comes to our infrastructure and our organizational scope, is stand up and come out of the weeds once in a while. Absolutely. Because you can't see everything when you're down in the trenches. Absolutely. You have to get up, take a week off. And I mean that, like turn off your BlackBerry or your
BlackBerry.
What's another old phone? I was trying to go for a theme, your Nokia 310. And really enjoy your week off with no pages, no pager duty, no emails. Just really disconnect from work.
But my good friend, if you have a Nokia 310, you are already disconnected.
You're already disconnected.
So that is a redundancy.
It's not a high availability.
Okay. I think let's go on the show. And let's move to this one.
Of being on vacation and going around the world, to our good friends in Indonesia, congratulations. Very much so. Absolutely. I don't know how loud I should clap with the microphone so close.
Yes. And I apologize if you got a little bit with hear loss. But we were excited because, again,
we are excited.
It's
another new Azure region, right?
Exactly. It's
the first data center region in Indonesia. Congratulations, everybody.
Congratulations.
That's amazing. So 24 million Indonesians are expected to be utilizing the Azure data center region by the end, are you ready for this, of 2021.
Yeah.
What? That is this year, my friend.
Yeah, it is. And it's not only that, Microsoft announced that they plans to skill additional 3 million Indonesian to empower that. So it means that we will have an increase of 3 million viewers on our podcast. Oh my God.
For multiple digits? I think we might be tied to legacy code.
But yeah, jokes aside, congratulations.
This is really cool, though. This has been a long time coming.
Yeah.
As all of the different jokes and weirdness aside, Indonesia is really an important source of knowledge.
Yes.
For the rest of the world. When we think about Canada really utilizes immigration, right?
Yeah.
I think that you're a very good example of that.
Yeah.
I'm very glad that you came to Canada and I had the chance to meet you. Otherwise, I'd be talking to myself right now.
Or I'd be doing this podcast in Portuguese, probably, yeah. But yeah, absolutely. But
so yeah, right. And it's a serious thing because Microsoft is also very much invested in Indonesia for offshore labor. I know there's all kinds of jokes, good and bad, surrounding these things when it comes to call centers and help that's offshore from North America. I actually don't really buy into that a whole lot on the negative side, because I actually really love when I call Microsoft that I get somebody who knows like that thin slice of absolute expert knowledge that I need to help me. Because let's face it, we phone a friend, pretty frequently.
Yeah.
I would say I probably phone maybe 2 or 3 times a year for a support ticket. Feels frequent to me. It might not be, I don't know. But when I create that ticket, I know I'm getting somebody who really knows like the nitty-gritty deep dive knowledge of Exchange or Azure AD problem or whatever it is, the challenge that we're facing. And I think it's really cool. because it's going to train so many more people, and it's going to help continue to drive that. And we're going to see better knowledge and labor coming out of there. And that's what I like. That's the part I love. And it's this whole CI model, and extending the data center region there isn't just simply extending a data center region. It's the same as when we talked about the data center region in Brazil as well.
Yeah.
It really is so significant to the local people there. It's huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, I had to get that off my chest.
That's okay. Another update that we have for this week is it's a lot of those. I think this week the theme is the retirement or the announcement of the leap day, or the next leap day in this case. Start using new alerts in Azure Monitor for Azure China 21 VNet.
And that's the China version of Azure, because there's some legal and monitoring requirements from Chinese government.
Yes.
So to be able to offer the awesomeness of Azure in China, 21 VNet is the way that Microsoft enables that, right?
Exactly. And what they are saying, and that's a very good point. What they are saying is, instead of having the classic alerts that you have, you should move to the new alerts that will enable you to just having way more experience, faster, smarter, and with more extensible. And I think it's really good that even on the very big country, like one of the big, I think it's the biggest country in the world.
It's the most populated.
Or the most populated one in this case. Yes. They have different regions inside of China, but they are, like you mentioned, with the 21 VNet, but is something that they are still improving. It's not because of that. And they have...
Oh, it doesn't... Yeah, there's no different big difference in the cadence for it. No. They still update all of the products. So I just want to point out with that update that in that blog update, there is a link that says migration tool.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of a, hey, before you upgrade, and then it kind of walks you through using the migration tool. So really cool that they're providing that migration tool in this case. I just wanted to call that one out.
No, absolutely. And Azure Monitor, in this case, it's getting the new alerts as well. Exactly the same thing that you're talking about, but in this case for the Azure Government Cloud. So they are updating, in this case, the China, and they are updating as well the Azure Monitor on the Government Cloud. So exactly the same update, but in this case for two different aspects of Azure Monitor inside of Azure World. One is on China and the other one is on the Government Cloud in this case. So this Government Cloud is even different because as China is a totally different data center and not a different region, but it doesn't have exactly the same way that the other regions have it.
Physical separation and service fabric separation. Right?
There is. In this case, is a totally different separation of the Azure Commercial. This is dedicated for Azure Government only, and now you can have exactly the same alerts that we talked on the previous update regarding Azure Government, which is...
So there's a way different cadence to the updates in Azure Government. So Classic Alerts has been retired since the end of August 2 years ago in public cloud. But now in 2024, 5 years later, it's going to be enforced in the government cloud.
Yes.
So, there's lots of reasons for that, not the least of which is there's cost and labor limitations in Azure resources for Azure government, the government entities.
Yeah.
And Azure and Microsoft do a really cool job of partnering with all the local and state, federal, provincial, federal governments, Canada, US, to make sure that everybody has what they need.
Exactly.
And typically in government, it moves a little slower than in private industry.
It's more process-based, and I think because of all of that, and that's why they are saying that you have the next 3 years to do that, instead of giving like a very short period of time, that they will not able to respond to that.
It's not that they're too slow. That's not at all what I meant. I do want to clarify that because we have lots of friends in government
we do.
We work with and have worked with over the years.
Yes.
But you're right. There's more process. We have to be, in that case, more careful.
Yes.
Because you and I, the regular public people, we typically demand that government services are perfect every time.
Yeah.
And that means they have to be way more careful, because in private industry, although we do have the liberty of having some downtime here and there as well, we also get the freedom to make mistakes. But it's much more pressure on government resources to not make mistakes.
Absolutely.
So that's a good thing, and that's part of their process. So I did want to clarify that, because I thought, as I played that back when I talked in my head, I thought, maybe that didn't sound the way it did to me.
That's okay, my friend. That's okay. I think everyone by now are fully aware what we were saying in this case, and knowing a little bit you. The next one is a kind of a sad moment, I have to say. That they are retiring the classic Azure Migrate, on the leap day. Again, the leap day over here, it's the theme of this podcast.
It is. We always have a theme. It's leap year today.
Yeah.
But this is where I fell in love with Azure Migrate on this classic version.
That's why I'm saying it's a sad moment, because this is where I start you to push into the Azure world, if you remember correctly.
It was, and that's what I mean as this is kind of where I fell in love, because it's where I realized that my different way of thinking isn't actually different. I just wasn't sitting in the right chair at the time. Yeah. Right.
And these tools save us.
We touch on that once in a while. I love talking about my history.
Absolutely.
Because I really hope that somebody's listening and gets motivated to kind of get up out of their chair and do a little more. That's all I want.
And I have to say that I have some kind of sentimental connection with this, because it was for a long period of time one of my favorite fixture of Azure, and it did save me, and it saved a lot of organizations that we work a lot of times. I remember when we had, for example, in Canada, I don't remember which year was it, but here in Canada a few years back, that we have these wildfires in the Saskatchewan province, that I remember that some good friend of mine and another MVP called me on Sunday night, say, hey, I need your help as well and your expertise. We need to save the school. And we were able, using this tool, to save the school, all the workloads, all the data and everything else into Azure. We even pull out Microsoft. And at that time, I remember that was one of the success cases, in this case for Microsoft, it is in Canada, to just how to utilize this tool on a very fashion way. So if my memory doesn't betray me, in an hour and a half or 2 hours, something like that, we were able to save the school of getting burned or get destroyed all the students' records. Luckily,
right, because I remember the story, and I know the other MVP you're talking about.
Yeah.
And they love telling this story too.
Exactly.
Because, and I love to hear it, because I love to draw a bit more out on it.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I do wish that people could hear about Microsoft is how the MVPs and Microsoft employees, I want to add that because I think it's overlooked sometimes, but Microsoft in general and MVPs, they go all out. Completely. When somebody phones and they press that 911 button for Microsoft and they say, hey, we have a real emergency with our data, with our systems, we need help. They don't stop until the problem is solved.
Absolutely.
And that's 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
They rotate around the world in shifts, or in your case and the other MVPs, you guys worked like for something like 2.5 days straight,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that brings it across the line, my friend. It really matters because that's the kind of that's the spirit that I wish people knew more about Microsoft in that way.
Yeah.
They're so helpful, and
Absolutely.
they really care about they actually care about the people and the customers. And in this case, like just maybe a few thousand students or something, right?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think about like 3,000 or 4,000 people? That's a very small number, a relatively small amount of data when we talk about data centers.
Yeah.
But it's critical data. It's important, and it's life-changing for those people.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Anyways, just a big shout out.
That's okay.
Because,
But it's a good segue.
I wish people knew that.
It is a good segue for the next update. That is the Azure Site Recovery, because that was the tool that we're talking about.
You betcha.
Okay.
ASR,
our good friend. That is coming to the rollout 54. That is, it becomes GA and is February. Again, this is not the first time we're talking about the rollup, in this case of ASR, on the podcast. First of all, I like to remember that if you are starting doing this, you're starting on the portal and you're moving down to the appliance, in this case that you have, using the OVF. So there is a new version of OVF, and you're going down to the provider, to the site recovery provider, and you're going down to the agents. So please update all of that. That is in the 2 seconds. It's the sequence that you should update your rollup update. But in this rollup, I have to say that I'm really pleased one thing. They increase the data disks of VMware up to 32 terabytes in size.
Yeah, that's a massive update. And I remember so many customer sites that we've worked with over the times with ASR that we have hit limitations and said, okay, so as part of implementing ASR, we have to take this disk or that disk, and we need to split it up below these data sizes for compatibility.
Exactly.
So this is a big step
forward. And it's huge, because if I remember correctly, the previous configuration that we have available, it was 4 terabytes.
I think you're right. I haven't seen an update since 4 terabytes. I don't monitor this one as close as I used to be honest. But either way, even if it was at 16, that's doubled to 32. Yeah. And that means that IaaS disk sizes are also improving along with this, right?
Exactly. And they have to do that. They have to allow, in this case, Azure first on a disk size, to allow everything else to cascade all those updates to all the service that they are using that service as well.
And in that this makes case, me think: did we miss an update about disk size restrictions with VMs?
No, we didn't miss that. It was previous on when we starting this show that they update this. Right now, I think this is the size that they have for the maximum.
It must have been close to when we started doing this.
Probably was.
Because I was trying to figure out, did we miss it?
I remember that part. But yes, like you mentioned, I had several clients that they have specially those VMs with storage, that they have especially on those SQL servers, SQL workloads, and file servers and all of that.
Special SQL, Oracle workloads running in VMware, all these different kinds of scenarios.
It was a pain to just kind of, we have to plan, in this case, the tear down, in this case, of that storage, provisioning another storage apart, creating that disks or that volumes inside of Windows.
And sometimes it means that either ASR gets rolled out as an option as part of a DR or a migration strategy, or that we have a one-off that's an exemption. And those I absolutely despise exemptions because then it makes everything non-standard. So if you're doing one exemption, you might as well do 5, because now you have exceptions to all the rules that you just put in place. So I think this is really cool, because this means it's going to open the doors not only with just the bigger disk size availability, but the fact that it's just more flexible. So absolutely. If you didn't catch on, we love ASR around here.
Absolutely. If you can take one thing about this update is me and Andrew, we love ASR. I don't know if you noticed that part, but But with this update, it comes to the end of our show this week, on this episode. We have a lot of good things about it. A lot of announcements on the leap year. If you can have a team, it's going to be the weekly updates of the leap year or the next leap year in this case, right?
This is true, yeah. In 2024,
2024.
Yeah, ton of updates.
So and we will review this at 2024. We will always come back and say, you will see when we make this. Let me see when we make this going up. Probably this way going up, and to see that part, we will link to this video. But yes, once again, thank you very much.
Episode coming up in the next 3 years.
Exactly.
Folks. That's right. Stay tuned.
Don't forget to like the video. In this case, send us the print screen if you like it, or just comment, and we will send you a very customizable calendar event for not forgetting all of those updates that we mentioned this year. Once again, thank you very much, Andrew, for being part of this.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening. And see you in this case next week.